Hi there.
How are you?
Pretty good.
Awesome. So, thank you so much for speaking with me today. I was hoping that you could just introduce yourself to the folks here, and then we can talk a bit about the challenges and opportunities for recent graduates.
Sure. Well, my name is Susan MacGregor, and I teach international development at Humber College in the postgrad program.
Awesome. And so, Susan, what are some of the main challenges that students and recent graduates are going to face when they, are getting out into the real world?
Sure. Well, I think the biggest challenge is that a lot of students who've studied particularly international development or political science or anthropology or something similar in undergrad don't really understand what the industry is. The school prepares them to write really good papers. It prepares them to think critically. It prepares them to criticize the industry, which is great. That's what university is all about, critical thinking. But they don't necessarily understand what the real jobs are. So a lot of the jobs are much more practical in nature. They're being able to write funding proposals. They're being able to understand budgets and accounting and manage people and all of those things, which are not necessarily easy skill sets for a recent graduate. Also, they have sometimes unrealistic expectations about how much money they can earn very early in their careers. There's plenty of it's a totally reasonable career to make lots of money. I've made a decent amount of money. It's not a problem. But it doesn't happen quickly.
Right.
The first couple of years, there's still an instance of having to pay your dues, having to build some experience. So the graduate expecting to earn $70,000 a year out of graduation is unrealistic.
Yeah, and it's interesting too because I think a lot of people, for speaking just for development students, a lot of people go into it for really altruistic, reasons. But then as they kind of start to learn more and they start to get to the end of their degree or their graduate degree and they're like, oh wow, I haven't made money for my whole life and it's something that I want to do eventually, then it becomes a little bit more of like a goal. So let's talk a little bit about, you were talking about how there's, you can write a great essay and you can critique, a great essay, but the skill sets are lacking. So what do you think some of the best ways to develop those skill sets are?
Sure. I mean, the best way to develop a skill set is to practice the skill. So that means volunteering with an agency, doing an internship. If you want to work in international development long-term, international field experience is essential. Whether that's through an internship, I mean, ideally it's through working with a real agency, but it could be going overseas and teaching English and then volunteering with an agency when you're there, any international travel, or even if that's beyond your financial capability, volunteering with vulnerable populations here in Canada. And that could mean working with the homeless, it could mean working with Indigenous populations, it could mean working with the elderly, those with disabilities. So working with a vulnerable population somewhere will give you some of those real skills. You could also go to school and take more classes.
Yeah.
Which I have to say as a professor.
Totally. But I think there is that real conundrum of like, you can't get a job without experience and you can't get experience without a job. And at least in my personal experience, it ended up being a volunteer opportunity that kind of helped me overcome that conundrum because I was getting tangible experience it wasn't a lucrative capacity, but I was still getting that experience that then allowed me to get a tangible job once I came back to Canada. So can you talk a little bit about your own experience kind of transferring yourself from the academic sphere into the the workforce, and then now you're back kind of in academia as well?
Sure. Well, first off, when I finished, my undergrad degree is in nothing to do with international development. My undergraduate degree is in tourism management. I knew I wanted to travel. I took tourism. ID is not a huge stretch from that, but that's sort of where I was when you're forced to make a career choice at age 17, which is where people are. I finished and I ended up doing an MBA, and I did an international MBA really for two reasons. One, quite frankly, I didn't really know what I wanted to do, and business sounded like it was going to give me a job. So that was appealing. And then I ended up working overseas for quite a while. I transitioned back to academia, frankly, because I really do like school.
Mm-hmm.
But also I was getting a bit disillusioned with the field and how things were going.
Mm-hmm.
And it's just, for me, it's very motivating to see every year a new crop of students who come in who are so motivated and so enthusiastic and really want to change the world. And that re-energizes me every year. So for me, that's a really fun way to live my life, to get re-energized every year.
Totally. And what is some of the biggest advice that you give to students that are just about to go on an international project?
My biggest advice I give them is to have fun, and to milk as much out of the experience as they can. Within this day of technology, I tell people, do not spend every night, on FaceTime with your friends at home, or updating your Facebook site, or watching movies that you or downloaded off Netflix before you went overseas.
Right.
Go out and meet the local population, meet the people, network. Frankly, that's where your next job is going to come from. So you need to go out and talk with people. So to just, do what you have to do. Stay connected with home, sure, but don't stay so connected with home that you miss what's going on around you in the field.
Amazing. Awesome. Well, I think that's everything.
Great.
So I just wanted to thank you so much for speaking with me today.
No problem, anytime.
Cheers.